Hello, everybody. It's Chris again from CSS Tricks with podcast number 3, where we're going to continue building this website from a Photoshop mockup. Let's take a look at the mockup one more time. This is what we're trying to build. And this is what we got so far. We got the header, some content, and a footer built. Pretty decent start. One little mistake that we made last time is, if I switch over here to the code, we put the footer inside of this page wrap. But if you'll remember, in the mockup, we said we wanted this footer to grow as wide as the website browser is going to be, touch the bottom, touch the left, touch the right. Well, that's not going to happen while it's inside of the page wrap, because remember, the page wrap has a width of 800, so that footer isn't going to be able to grow any wider than 800. So all we got to do to fix that is let's just cut it out of the page wrap and plunk it outside. Save that, and if we reload that, it doesn't look any different because we're at 800 pixels wide right here, but I promise you, if you could see me resizing the browser window there, it's going to behave a little better. So let's dive right into the main content area and just get started cleaning that up. I should mention quick though, you can see how this footer isn't all the way on the bottom of the page. Since it's the last thing in the content, it really will be touching the bottom browser when there's enough content up here. And we're fairly certain that there'll be enough content up here to always push, have the height of all the content be higher than any normal browser window. So the footer really will be touching the bottom of the browser window on all pages. Okay, so remember here in our mockup, in the main content area, all this area in here, we have what we're going to consider to be a left column and a right column. So let's jump to our HTML and write that first, like we've been doing so far. Remember, if you write the HTML first, you're going to at least attempt to be as semantic as possible. So let's have one, like the page wrap, one big kind of div to contain it all. Div of main content, and that'll hold all this. Just to remind ourselves, it's a good idea to do this. Okay, and then all this text will just dump into another div, like we said, left column. And make sure to end that div as well. Okay, now just to be clean here, let's indent the left column properly. And then we're also going to need, after the left column, a right column, the sidebar. We'll just call it a right col. It can be empty for now. And then let's style that. First thing we created was the main content area. So div, then ID of main content. There's not a whole lot we're going to do with this, but one thing I know we're going to want to do is just give it a little space after all the content before the footer, just for a little breathing room, a little design room. In the mock-up here, we have it fade out, but that's just because I had a screenshot here that went a lot deeper and I didn't want to go that far. But you can see that this amount of space here, this nice breathing room before the footer, I think that's a good idea. We can accomplish that with just throwing a little padding on the bottom. That's pretty healthy. I'm not sure what else we'll use that for, but it's just kind of a nice wrap in case we need to use it. But within that main content, we have that left column, div, well, just let's specify even better. Main content, div, left col. We know we want it floated to the left because we know that the right sidebar is going to be floated to the right. That's just how it's going to work. Let's float it to the left, and let's see. I already did a little experimenting here. I think, I don't know. Actually, I haven't, but let's try like 530 pixels. And similarly, just because it's going to be similar, let's copy and paste. The right column is going to float to the right with the width of, let's see, 800 minus 530 is 270, but we might need a little space. Let's just call it 260. Now this is kind of important because the main content only has two things in it, a left column and a right column. They're both floated. That does weird things to height. It's the height of the main content it's not going to know how tall to be. That's just what floats do. It's kind of a weird scenario, but when you know that all the content inside of an element is going to be floated like that, you really need to clear the float after you do that. So we'll use a little toolbox CSS, I call it. Just an empty div with a class of clear, and then we'll just kind of throw that up near the top with some other of this generic kind of CSS. Clear both. That's all it takes. So let's see if we did a good job there, if I screwed something up. Reload. Oh, I must have screwed something up. Maybe I didn't save the HTML. That's what happened. So now you can see there's nothing in the right sidebar, but here's our 530 pixel width left column. Here's our blank right sidebar. Here's our 50 pixels of nice padding at the bottom of the content, and because the float got cleared, the footer's now on the bottom. So, good start. Okay, now let's start cleaning up the typography in here a little bit. This is obviously just gack looking right now, so let's jump over to TextMate here and start looking at this. The main content, the paragraphs of text in here are wrapped in P paragraph tags. So this font size of 1.2 I think would work pretty well for the body text for them. So our list items already have a 1.2. Let's give paragraph items the same font size. Also, an important consideration in body text is in typography, the line height. I think giving it a little bit more than the font size is generally nice for the eye. And paragraphs, as well as list items, kind of benefit from a little bottom margin to nudge that next paragraph down a little bit. Maybe not quite as much as a line height, but I think that's a nice touch. And we'll save that. Also, a header. Obviously, this article is going to need a header. Let's give it a nice, bold H1 tag. What was it? Something like expect record political spending in 2008. Something like that, right? H1 tags are for headers, so this is a good semantic use of that. And let's declare some styling for the H1 tag. Let's make it nice and big, like 3 M's. Remember, with the reset, we have everything set to margin 0, padding 0. That's going to affect these header tags as well. Generally, browsers have some default margin for header tags, but we kind of strip that out, so we kind of got to apply it here. Let's just make it the same as the paragraphs. Alright, let's see if that makes this mock-up look any better. save it and switch back to Firefox and reload. We made the 2008 kind of a widow down here, but overall this body text looks pretty decent and readable, so not bad. I don't think that was the exact title anyway. What is it? Expect record spending for political ads in 2008. There we go. Much better. Now let's work on that sidebar a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at this sidebar. This area here. You see it's got this big, nice, thick bar on top of it, just as a kind of a design element to set off the sidebar. Let's start with that. We can use the eyedropper tool in Photoshop here to click that and get the hex code for it, which is, oops, sorry, I'm out of the screen here, 540,000. We can just copy it from there. And since that's really, it doesn't need to be part of the content, it's really more of just a design element, we can accomplish that pretty easily with CSS. So let's take a look at the CSS for the sidebar. The right column, border, top. Oh, how big was it? Let's call it 3 pixels for now. Solid of that color. If we want to find out the exact pixel height of that, let's just jump back over to Photoshop. If you're running Leopard, Command-Shift-4 brings up these handy-dandy little crosshairs, which if we go over here and highlight just that high, that's about, see where it says 5 or 7, 9 there? That's width by height. So, or 7, 8, that's about 8 pixels tall. Then you can just hit escape to get rid of it. Just a nice little pixel measurement tool. So let's call that 8 pixels. And save that. Jump over to Firefox and see if our line made it. There's the line. Nice. Alright. Let's jump back to Photoshop so we can copy some of that text out of there so we don't have to write it ourselves. I'll grab my text tool, jump in here and grab this header. Command C, copy it, jump back over to TextMate, and then up in our markup up here, let's start getting some content into that right column. I would use a H2 tag here. It's in the sidebar, so it's not, you know, it's just nice to have your subheadings use a less high header tag. Well, looks like we got some, came in and formatted a little bit, all caps. That's okay, we'll just leave it the way it is. So that's our header for the sidebar. We got to remember that we have not yet styled the H2 tag, so we better do that. But let's jump back to Photoshop. Grab the text tool. Let's see. Grab this text. And plunk that down with the same paragraph tags that we use in the main body. Although this learn more was kind of, it's off by itself, so we'll throw that. Also in p tags, but it was a link, so let's give it an anchor link. Close out that tag. Okay, so let's style what an H2 looks like, because we know that. Now I know when I copied and pasted it, it all came in as uppercase, but that might not always be the case. So let's do a text transform on it to all uppercase, which will just kind of force uppercase on it, and a margin bottom. Now, let's jump back to the mock-up just for a second. I think this text over here is a little smaller than this text is, which I think is kind of a nice touch to make. This is ancillary content and this is main content. This is off to the side. It just looks like a little smaller text over here, which is a nice design touch. So I think we should be able to do that in our CSS by going right over to in the right column here. Let's say that the paragraph tags that are in the right column that are in the main content are going to have a slightly smaller font size. Maybe we can get away with percentages here. That might be a nice way to do it. Like 85%. Let's see if that does it. Save it, jump back to Firefox, reload. Okay, few problems here. That 85% was just way too small. You can barely see this text. And our text here underneath the border butts right up against that border. So let's fix those problems. Jump back to our CSS. To get that text away from that top border, let's just apply some padding to the top. 15 pixels ought to do it. And then 85% was just too much for that. Let's call it 90%, and then maybe let's see what happens if we bump up the font size just a little bit. It might be edging on too small. And compensate with some line height. There we go. It's still a little too small, and this is what you get when you copy text out of Photoshop too. Can you see that? These little tiny weird box things. That's some kind of problematic font thing. I shouldn't have copied that text out of Photoshop. It brings over weird characters, and it's just kind of bad news. I can go in there and clean that up, but they might even be invisible characters. So generally that's bad news. But we did kind of get the small text effect over here, although it still might be a little too small, and this might be a little too big. But I'll go ahead and make those tweaks, but that's generally the idea here. Okay, the other thing that this sidebar has is this big TV image down here. So let's take a look at that. One thing I noticed right away here is that this TV antenna comes up here, and then if you follow it straight left, that goes right into the word learn more. Now, that's something we could accomplish, but we'll have to think about how important that really is to the design. Why I mention it is because you can think of all elements on the page as blocks. Even this learn more thing is a block, and that block would extend all the way up here, and this TV is a block, and that would extend all the way up here. These two blocks are inside of each other, really. So, we could just bump this antenna down a little bit, a couple 10 pixels, and then those boxes wouldn't be inside of each other, and that would just be fine if you ask me. But if it was really important that this antenna went up as high as it is here, we could apply some negative top margin or something and bump it up, but I really just don't think it's that important. So let's get it out of here. I turned off the layer of that text, you can see, and then we can just take the crop tool and see if we can get a decent crop on it. Let's see. Now this shadow area down here we definitely want to capture because it'll look like it's cut off if we don't get enough of it. So that looks about right. Crop it down, and then we can save and export for devices. Now I'm not sure if that's going to fit in my little recording area here, but I'll try to get it in there as best as I can. Now, something like this with gradients and detail and the variety of color like that, it's generally going to work out best as a JPEG. Let's see if I can get it so you can see the options here. Sure. Quality level of 60 here makes it about 12K, and this is actually how it's going to look. It's showing you a preview of the final version here, so that looks pretty good to me. Let's save this thing out. Let's save it right into the folder where I need it, actually. we'll just call it TV. Okay, let's switch back to our markup. So at the end of the right column here, we'll just use an image tag to get that TV in there. Image, source, images, TV. It's a good measure to always give it an alt tag. Makes your code validate too, which is nice. So that should be all it takes to get that TV in there. Let's jump over and take a look. There it is. Oops, I accidentally put it. And look at that, it didn't get quite enough of the shadow. That's okay, I can fix that. But I should have put the image tag after learn more, just like the mock-up. So let me go fix that quick. Cut, paste, clean up these spaces, save it. And there's our sidebar. The one discrepancy we got right now is this blue with underline is the browser default for an anchor link. We can actually go ahead and change that. I'll fix that. That's pretty easy. And then our next step here is to get our little chunk in over here like the mock-up with the remote control. Let's take a look at the mock-up again. Remember that. Let's back up a step here before we cropped. This quick jump section. Now this, the remote control, comes up and extends. Remember how the TV antenna and the text, those were kind of going to be boxes on top of each other? I didn't think it was that important in the sidebar because it was just this little antenna that was sticking up too high. But this remote control, I think it is kind of important that this text kind of comes down and the remote control comes up. That's kind of important to the design of this area. So we'll actually deal with that in this section. Alright, the last thing we need to do here is work on this quick jump section over here as a part of this mock-up. Just for the sake of speeding things up here, I've already gone ahead and written the markup for it. It's a div with an ID of quick jumps. It's got an H3 tag that says the text quick jumps, a couple of paragraph tags that are links that start with bullet points with the text in here. The reason I put these bullet points in a span here is if you look back here at the mock-up, the little bullets are yellow. It's a little design touch. So I wrap it in a span so we could have some CSS control over that. So let's start with the styling this up a little bit. First of all, we need to style the whole quick link section itself. So here's the left column. Let's just keep staying specific. We wouldn't need to. We could just put this number sign here and say, yeah, quick jumps, and that would work just fine. But I like the idea of staying specific as possible. So main content, left column, quick jumps. Okay, I think we're gonna need about 200 pixels of width there, floated to the left. Let's give it some margin to the right, so push that stuff away a little bit, give it some breathing room, and let's leave it at that for now. Now we need the paragraph tags. It looks different in the mock-up. If you look, these are everything. Well, let's start with the header tag. It's got a yellow background, red text, it's centered in that box. We already looked at the yellow bullets, but all the text in here is uppercase. It's italicized, so let's get started writing that stuff. Keeping with our specificity thing, let's do it like this. The P tags that are in quick jumps, that are in the left column, that are in main content, get some specifics here. Like I said, uppercase for one thing. The font weight looked pretty bold to me, so let's bold it. And let's space out those letters a little bit, just because that's how it looked to me. And then remember that span that wrapped that bullet point? Get even just one more step specific. And say the things that are in the span, the color of that yellow color, which happens to be E9BC3D. Yeah. Okay. And they're going to be links because they're quick jumps. But I set up our link color in this document, you can see here, to be that red color that we've been using with no text decoration, basically meaning it removes the underline, and then on rollover it underlines. So that'll make those links in the quick jumps red, but in the mock-up they're black. So let's just say that links within the quick jump section, instead of PA, are going to be black. So that's that. Now let's look at the header. We use this H3 tag up here for the quick jumps. That's got all kinds of styling to it. Let's do that part. Here's our header tags, keeping everything organized here. Since there's a lot of things, I'll do it in this style. Font size, fairly big. Uppercase again. It's also italic. It's spaced out even more so than the text below it. The big important ones here for style though is it's got that background color, which is, I think we should let's just stick with that red. And then the color of the letters themselves are, they just so happen to be 5E0DO4. Okay, and then to give it a little space and make it kind of block-like looking, it's just 5 pixels of padding, which will apply that 5 pixels of padding on all sides, top, right, bottom, and left. And then let's push stuff down just a little bit. So let's take a look at how that looks. Save everything. Oops. Yeah, that background color shouldn't have been red if the text is red. But we did pretty good here. All caps with the black, with the underline. Looks pretty good. Let's fix that color quick. The background color should be this yellow color. There we go. And also we missed the text alignment. Should be centered in there. Center. There we go. That's looking healthy. Now let's look at the mock-up again. Remember the remote control, that's down there. We're going to need that as an image. So just like we cut out the TV, let's turn some stuff off around it so we can get a nice clean crop of it. Let's see what we get here. It's pretty clean. Save as again as a JPEG as remote.jpg. Okay, well, let's back up and move to our markup. I think a good way to apply this is going to be as a background image to that quick links div. Just because then, I don't know, we can have it be in the background, have the text be on top of it, and solve that little block issue. I just think that's kind of a smart way to deal with it in this case. So let's apply that remote as a background image. We want it to be on the bottom, centered, and not repeating. But if we just leave it at that, let's just see what happens. It's just going to kind of cover this whole area, I think. And that's not what we want. We want it to be on the bottom more. So I think what we can do is just apply padding to the bottom of this quick links thing and extend the height of the box. And the image will hang out down here, but it'll be just enough room. So let's take a look at the height of that remote image that we made. Remember, you can always go to the Finder, click it, and click Command I or Get Info, which will give us this and the dimensions of it. It's 198 by 128. We don't need to apply it the full 128 of height to the padding because we want it to mingle a little bit. So let's try padding bottom like 115. See if that does it. There we go. We could even, let's just pull it up just a little bit more because that was the whole point of doing this kind of. 110. Looks good. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. We basically turned this Photoshop mock-up into an HTML and CSS website. I mean, maybe it's not quite super perfect, but it's definitely, you know, within tweaking distance of a good interpretation of this. Whereas this is just pixels. This is, you know, a real bona fide HTML and CSS website. So thanks for listening. Remember to visit CSS Tricks. That's css-tricks.com for more of this stuff. And please feel free to send any feedback on these things. I know it's a little rough going here at first, but I hope these take off and get better. Thanks very much, everyone.